Praise God. Give thanks to the Father in all that you say and do. Well, amen. Amen. Sing glory, hallelujah. Christ the Lord has died for you. Praise God.
This is Ben May with the Seek the Old Paths TV program. I want to thank you for continuing with us now as we look again into some great information that talks about the existence of God. And what we are encouraging you to do is to think about writing, that's where you can see it, writing in or calling us and leaving us your name and address and your phone number, and we will enroll you in a free course that is called the Introductory Christian Evidences Correspondence Course. And it is just great. This lesson that we're going to look at briefly now for a few minutes is just fascinating to me. It's hard for me to believe that people can take an honest, objective look at the world around us and somehow think that there is not a God. But I want us to look, and I want us to have our faith strengthened and deepened. And I want to encourage you again, call and get your own set of these. There are 10 lessons. When you get one lesson, you fill it out, you send it back. In fact, there is a little place you tear this middle, get it opened up here. You tear this middle section out and you answer the question, send it back to us in the envelope that we provide, and we'll grade it, send it back to you. And at the end of the 10th lesson, then we'll get you a certificate of achievement. We'll present that to you that's suitable for framing because you would have earned it. But I think more importantly, you would have your strength faith in that there must be a God. There's just no other explanation. And so let's take a look now at lesson number 3. Also, these are available on our YouTube channel, Seek the Old Paths. And so if you've missed the first 2 lessons, you can go back and watch those. Also, our regular Bible study on our TV program, they're also on that YouTube channel, and you can see those again as well. And so as we look then at these, to me, just undeniable evidence of the existence of God, then what we really look at and we see so easily is the idea of design. One of the laws of thought used in the field of logic is the law of rationality. This law states that a person should accept as true only those conclusions for which there is adequate evidence. This makes good sense because a person who accepts conclusions for which there is no evidence or inadequate evidence would be irrational. In discussing the case for God's existence, theists use logic, clear reasoning, and factual data to present arguments that are adequate to justify the conclusion that God exists. I've said this before. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. I knew I had got that quote twisted up. It's the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. That's why people, I think, who are agnostic or maybe atheists, that's why people who are atheists or agnostic, I think, fail to see, that's what they fail to see, is that faith, by definition, from the Bible itself, is not something that you accept blindly, without reason, without evidence. And that's what this course is helping us to see. So here is a fancy word here. I get the screen to scroll down for us. Again, this is in lesson 3. The teleological argument. Teleological. It's a big word. And so in order to prove the existence of God, theists often use what is known as the teleological argument. Teleology, it's kind of a tongue twister for me. But I don't want you to get hung up on these fancy sounding words. I want you to look at the idea behind them. It's a word that refers to purpose or design. Thus, this approach suggests that there is design. There must be a designer. And that just makes sense, doesn't it? In logical form, the argument may be presented as follows. If the universe shows evidence of design, it must have had a designer. The universe shows evidence of design. Thus, the universe must have had a designer. This correct form of logical reasoning and the implications that flow from it have not escaped the attention of those who do not believe in God. Even unbelievers understand that one does not get a poem without a poet, a law without a lawgiver, a painting without a painter, or a design without a designer. However, even though many unbelievers admit that design demands a designer, they deny that there is any design in nature sufficient to establish the existence of a great designer. I tell you, people just paint themselves in a corner. They're determined for their argument to win. And so they decide, oh, well, yeah, a design requires a designer. I'm just not convinced that the universe shows design. That's incredible to me. So the disagreement between the person who believes in God and the person who does not has nothing whatsoever to do with whether design demands a designer. Rather, the point of contention is whether or not there is design in nature, adequate to prove the conclusion that a designer does exist. This is where the teleological argument comes into play. So let's think about now the design of the universe. Again, this is just fascinating. Our universe operates using exact scientific laws. The precision of the universe and the exactness of these laws allow scientists to launch rockets to the moon with the full knowledge that they will land within a few feet of their intended target. Such precision and exactness also allow astronomers to predict eclipses many years before they happen, or to determine when Halley's Comet will be seen again. The precision, complexity, and orderliness within the universe are not in dispute. But while atheists willingly admit that there is complexity and even order, they are not prepared to say that there is design, because they know that purposeful design demands a designer. Is there evidence of design? The atheist claims that no such evidence exists. The theist, however, says that there is evidence of design and offers the following information as support for that claim. We live in a tremendously large universe. While its outer limits have not yet been measured, it is estimated to be as much as 93 billion light years in diameter. Now, a light year is the distance light travels in 1 year, moving at a speed of more than 186,000 miles per second. A light year is approximately 5.9 trillion miles. Well, there are an estimated 2 trillion galaxies in the universe and innumerable stars. The Milky Way galaxy in which we live contains over 300 billion stars and is so large that even moving at the speed of light, it would require 100,000 years to travel across it. If we drew a map of the Milky Way galaxy where we live and represented the Earth and Sun as two dots, 1 inch apart, we would need a map at least 4 miles wide to locate the next nearest star, and a map 25,000 miles wide to reach the center of our galaxy. Without doubt, this is a rather impressive universe. But while the size itself is impressive, its design is even more impressive. The temperature inside the sun is estimated to be over 20 million degrees Celsius. The Earth, however, is located at exactly the correct distance from the sun. The Earth, however, is located at exactly the correct distance from the sun to receive the proper amount of heat and radiation to sustain life as we know it. If the Earth would move just 10% closer to the sun, about 10 million miles, far too much heat and radiation would be absorbed. If the Earth were moved just 10% farther from the sun, too little heat would be available. Either situation would spell doom for life on Earth. Think about this one. The Earth is rotating on its axis at 1,000 miles per hour at the equator and simultaneously moving around the sun at 70,000 miles per hour, approximately 19 miles per second, while the sun and its solar system are whirling through space at 600,000 miles per hour in an orbit so large that it has been estimated it would take over 220 million years to complete a single orbit. Now, just if you can, just kind of get that's that concept of how huge, enormous this universe is. Interestingly, however, as the Earth moves in its orbit around the sun, it departs from a straight line by only 1/9 of an inch every 18 miles. If it departed by 1/8 of an inch, we become so near to the sun that we would be incinerated. If it departed by 1/10 of an inch, we would find ourselves so far from the sun that we would freeze to death. The Earth is about 240,000 miles from the moon, whose gravitational pull produces ocean tides. If the moon were moved closer to the Earth by just 1/5, the tides would be so enormous that twice a day they would reach 35 to 50 feet high over most of the Earth's surface. What would happen if the rotation rate of the Earth were cut in half or doubled? If it were half, the seasons would be doubled in length, which would cause such harsh heat and cold over much of the Earth that it would be difficult, if not impossible, to grow enough food to feed the Earth's population. If the rotation rate were doubled, the length of each season would be half, causing the same kind of potential food shortage. The Earth is tilted on its axis, exactly 23.5 degrees. If that tilt were reduced to zero, much of the Earth's water would accumulate around the two poles, leaving vast deserts in their place. If the atmosphere surrounding the Earth were much thinner, meteorites could strike our planet with such great force and frequency, causing worldwide devastation. The oceans produce a huge reservoir of moisture that constantly is evaporating and condensing, thus falling upon the land as refreshing rain. It is a well-known fact that water heats and cools at a much slower rate than a solid landmass, which explains why desert regions can be blistering hot in the daytime and freezing cold at night. Water somehow holds its temperature longer and provides a sort of natural heating and air conditioning system for the land areas of the Earth. To me, this doesn't seem dry and uninteresting. To me, this is fascinating. To think how precisely made we are. Here's something going on down in the reading. It says temperature extremes would be much more unpredictable than they are now if approximately 4/5 of the Earth were not covered with water. And this part, it's just fascinating to me. In addition, humans and animals inhale oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide. On the other hand, plants take in carbon dioxide and give off oxygen. We depend upon plants for our oxygen supply, yet we often fail to realize that almost 50% of our oxygen comes from tiny plants in the seas. If our oceans were much smaller, we would soon run out of air to breathe. Can a person reasonably be expected to believe that these exacting requirements for life as we know it have been met just by accident? That the Earth is exactly the right distance from the sun, it's exactly the right distance from the moon, exactly the right diameter, the right atmospheric pressure, the right tilt, the right amount of ocean water, all this just exactly right. And are we really expected to believe it's just by accident? I think most people say that's just ridiculous to come to that conclusion. Yet some people still suggest that the universe, the earth, and life on the earth are all here as a result of a lucky accident. Several years ago in Science Digest magazine, world renowned physicist John Gribben published an article that stressed the importance of facts like the ones mentioned above, yet labeled his article Earth's Lucky Break. The famous British astronomer Sir Fred Hoyle, however, has suggested that the idea of randomness and disorder somehow giving rise to design and order is like saying that a tornado could sweep through a junkyard and assemble a Boeing 747 from all the scraps. The statistical improbability of the universe just happening is staggering. The only alternative is that it was created by an intelligent designer, God. I hope you're seeing the value of this course. Because that's what I'm hoping, that's what I'm trying to encourage you to take advantage of. We need to be people of faith. We want you to seek the old path, and the old path is a path of walking by faith and not by sight, as the Bible instructs us to do. No, we might not have all the answers to everything, but we know this: there is a God. He designed this world in which we live. There's evidence, as one book says, that demands a verdict. I don't see how we can reach any other conclusion. Now, I want to notice just a few other things in this lesson 3. This is not the entire lesson, but I hope it gives you a feel for the value of the information that it has. One of the places to go to show that there is a God is just look at ourselves, the design of the human body. See, according to those who do not believe in God, the human body is the result of a set of lucky circumstances set in motion by those mythical parents, Father Time and Mother Nature. Haven't you heard of those? Yet this suggestion does not fit the actual facts of the case. Can a person reasonably be expected to conclude that the masterpiece of the human body, with its ingenious systems and amazing design, is the result of blind chance operating over millions of years? That just doesn't make sense, does it? Or would it be more reasonable to suggest that the human body is the result of purposeful design by the great designer? I'll give you a few facts here. The human body may be considered at 4 different levels. First, there are cells, representing the smallest unit of life. Secondly, there are tissues, like muscle tissue, nerve tissue, which are groups of the same kind of cells carrying on the same kind of activity. Third, there are organs, like the heart, liver, and so forth, which are groups of tissues working together in harmony. Fourth, there are systems, like the reproductive system, circulatory system, and so on, which are made up of groups of organs carrying out specific bodily functions. While we don't have the space to examine each of them, a brief look at the human body as a whole leads us to the conclusion that there must be intelligent design at work. Think about this. A human body is composed of over 250 different kinds of cells: red blood cells, white blood cells, nerve cells, and so on, totaling approximately 100 trillion cells in an average adult. These cells come in all different shapes and sizes and perform many different tasks. For example, certain cells, like the male spermatozoa, are so small, each being only 0.05 millimeters long, that 20,000 of them would fit inside a capital 0 from a standard typewriter. Some cells, placed end to end, would make only 1 inch if 6,000 were assembled together. Yet all the cells of the human body if set end to end, would circle the earth over 200 times. That's just amazing to me. And then when you look at the breakdown of the cell, and in this lesson, it goes into just minute detail to show us how microscopically tiny and yet how intricate and how well designed they are. And so you've got, it says cells have three major parts. There's a cell membrane. There, inside the cell is a three-dimensional cytoplasm. Then the cytoplasm, inside of it is the nucleus that contains most of the genetic material and serves as the control center of the cell. The cell membrane is approximately 0.06 of a micrometer thick, yet allows selective transport into and out of each cell. Inside the cytoplasm, there are many different chemical reactions occurring at any one time, with each cell having the following biochemical capabilities. Now think about this. Each cell in your body, my body, can do this. It has communication, waste disposal, nutrition, repair, and reproduction. Also, in the cytoplasm, there are organelles, such as the mitochondria, over 1,000 per cell in many instances. Now, all this is inside of a microscopic cell. These provide the cell with its energy. Furthermore, there are ribosomes, which are protein-producing factories. Golgi bodies store some of the proteins manufactured by the ribosomes, while lysosomes within the cytoplasm function as waste disposal units. Then you have the nucleus. It's the control center. It's kind of like the brain of the cell. And it's separated from the cytoplasm by a nuclear membrane. Within the nucleus is the genetic information of the cell, chromosomes made of deoxyribonucleic acid, which is DNA. DNA is a supermolecule that carries the coded information needed to produce all the components of the cell. Now, think of this. If the DNA from a single human body cell were removed from the nucleus and unraveled, it's found in the cell in a spiral position. It would be approximately 6 feet long and would contain approximately 6 billion nucleotides known as base pairs. It has been estimated that if all the DNA in an adult human were placed end to end, it would reach to the sun and back 400 times. Each trip is 186 million miles to get there. That is, it's just mind-boggling to me. It should also be noted that the DNA molecule does something that we as humans have only begun to understand. It stores coded information in a chemical format and then uses enzymes and RNA molecules to decode and utilize the information. It says that if the information were written in English, the DNA in a single human cell, this is a single microscopic cell, the DNA in a single human cell would fill a 300-volume set of encyclopedias of approximately 2,000 pages each. Yet, just as amazing is the fact that all the genetic information needed to reproduce the entire human population, about 8 billion people, could be placed into the space of about 1/80th of a cubic inch. In fact, chromosomes, which are the individual segments of the genome, are compacted around 10,000-fold in order to fit within the nucleus. And yet people say there is no God. The human genome is truly a fascinating marvel that we're just beginning to understand. I want to have time to share with you let me scroll through and find that there is a fascinating bird. It's all kind of fascinating creatures in the animal world, right? I love watching the shows that talk about some of these, like on the Discovery Channel and such as that. Did you know there's a bird that has a thermometer in its beak? You know, we are fascinated when we can take our temperature, and now, you know, you've got thermometers that just take a few seconds. Well, I want to talk about for a minute, or read about here, that there is an Australian bird called the Mallee fowl that's got a built-in thermometer, which is far more accurate than the ones humans use to take their temperature. So when the time comes for the female Mallee fowl to lay her eggs, the male bird digs a pit in the ground, piles a large mound of sticks and leaves in the pit. He covers this pile with sand, sometimes making it as tall as 4 feet. With the sand on top, the leaves and sticks begin to rot, which produces heat. The male makes a hole in the top of the mound where the female then lays a single egg. About a week later, he will make another hole and she will lay another egg. This process goes on until there are 18 eggs in the nest. Think about this. Several times a day, the male pokes his beak into the mound. He then sticks out his tongue, which is such a good thermometer that it can measure a temperature change of 1/10 of a degree. If the mound is too hot, he removes some of the sand. If it's too cool, he adds more sand. After about 7 weeks of incubation, the babies hatch. How does the Mallee fowl know the exact temperature to keep its eggs? How does it know that rotting leaves covered by sand will produce heat? How does its tongue measure temperature changes of 1/10 of a degree? It's simple. The Mallee fowl was designed, and design demands a designer. I'll tell you, there are so many examples like this in nature. And again, we could look at our own bodies to see even more things that are just mind-boggling. And people say there is no God. And people say, oh, we're not designed. It all happened by accident. The conclusion of the lesson says the only people who have difficulty understanding the implications of design are those who have refused to have God in their knowledge. That's from Romans chapter 1 and verse 28. It says, and even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a debased mind to do those things which are not fitting. I'll tell you, some of the people that I know and talk with, one of the reasons I think that they've decided there is no God is they don't want to be accountable. If there's no God, there's nobody to answer to. There's no life after this life, and some people would rather have it that way, but the evidence does not support it. The evidence supports that there is a God. Again, Psalm 14 verse 1, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. Thank you for listening and for watching. Again, I encourage you, call in. Leave your name, your address, your phone number, and we'll send you the first lesson of this series of lessons. Again, there are 10 of them. I think you'll really enjoy them. It points back to the old path, where the good way is. Let's find that path and walk in it. Thanks again. Join us next time.
A blind man sat by the road and he cried. A blind man sat by the road and he cried. A blind man sat by the road and he cried, oh, 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 show me the way, show me the way, show me the way to go home. A woman sat by the well and she cried, a woman sat by the well and she cried, a woman